The Supreme Court ruled in a 9-0 majority that Donald Trump had to facilitate the return of the Maryland father that was illegally deported to El Salvador and now rests within the most notorious prison in South America. They decided unanimously, Clarence Thomas, every conservative judge, all of them, that he had to be facilitated his return. Now, what the Trump administration has decided to do in response, after trying to rush all these people through the deportation process without their due process in order to make it so the courts can't react in time, now that the courts have finally reacted, they're just trying to find some way to use the court's decision in order to do as little as possible. And in this instance, it's with the word facilitate, because they said they had to facilitate their return. That means work towards their return. Well, the Trump administration is making the argument that they do not really have the power to facilitate his return because he is no longer within their control or within their jurisdiction, as he is now detained in the prison in El Salvador. So they're essentially saying that the president of the most powerful country on the planet could not somehow facilitate the return of a country that is on the same hemisphere as us that we could very easily intimidate. He's saying that he can't, though. He can't do it. He can't say bring him back. He couldn't make a phone call. Nope, can't. Trump is too weak to pull up the phone. Okay, he's sick. He's beside himself. He just can't do it. And after a press conference today, it was also the president of El Salvador saying, hey, I can't bring him back either. I'm not going to facilitate his return because I don't have the power to bring him back to the United States either. Now, he has the power to detain all those gangs in his country and have as much control over his country to extend his term limits and change the El Salvadorian constitution. He has all this power, but he doesn't have the power to return this one Maryland father, this union member. Doesn't have that power. I call bullshit. I don't believe it. Let's listen to them talk about it for a bit. They're back and forth where Trump and him both indicate, even though Trump has been told by the Supreme Court, by the super conservative majority Supreme Court, where every single judge ever appointed by Trump said he had to facilitate his return. Here is him now saying, no, I don't.
President Bukele to help return the man who your administration was mistakenly deported. The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador.
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was a paperwork. It was
to be clear, he has no criminal convictions, and the court said that he had no right to be deported. No right. That they have yet to provide any evidence that he was within MS-13 or that he's an active member of MS-13. That is yet to be presented to the American public, but they continue to say confidently MS-13 will also say they made a mistake. Choose a path. Either you made a mistake or you didn't make a mistake.
Additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as
they said that they had to facilitate their return.
Salvador wants to return him. This is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it.
That's not what they didn't say. If the El Salvadorians are nice, no, they said that the president of the United States had to facilitate it. That they facilitate the return. And you know, do we really think it'd be difficult for this man to say bring him back? You think if it was that easy for Trump to deport them all there in the first place, why would it be so hard for him to get him back? He can. He's just choosing not to.
Meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him, President
And
Bukele?
you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Usted estaría dispuesto a
Wait a
retornar.
minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, you know, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant. Because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens.
It's arrogant of American media to suggest. The Supreme Court ruled that you had to return him. Oh, it's arrogant of American media to suggest that we could ever tell El Salvador to, you're illegally deporting. Some of these people are not even El Salvadorians, like the Venezuelan hairdresser that fled to the United States as a political dissident and was arrested for, among other reasons, his soccer tattoo being misconstrued as a gang tattoo. Don't know how, but it was.
As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States. And
so, oh, wow, that's crazy. He's not even allowed to be in the United States. Oh, that's crazy. So why did the court tell you to bring him back, and why are you wiggling? Let's skip past Stephen Miller's ramblings and just get to the point where Bukele clearly says that he does not have the power to return him.
Can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you could release him inside El Salvador?
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our country.
There's a fascination.
They would
Look,
love it.
they treat it so non-seriously. It's treated so non-seriously. I mean, think about this. So Trump and the White House has no power to facilitate his return despite the Supreme Court decision, okay? Which many could easily interpret this as openly define the Supreme Court of the United States on word games around the word facilitate. But he doesn't have the power to do it. But also, the El Salvadorians, the one who actually have him in custody, their dictator, which is what Bukele is, okay? I don't care if you think he's based or he's Trump's friend or whatever amount of loser reasons you've been able to say, oh, he's so cool. He is a dictator. And what you like that, you don't like that, that's you. I don't. He is. He's extended the Constitution. He's extended his term limits, changed the Constitution to do that. And for all intents and purposes, whether or not he could be removed with an election or the people like him, he has the power to be a dictator. And so, if he has the power to be a dictator, and he has the power to extend his term limits, and he has the power to change the El Salvadorian Constitution, if he has the power to, in many instances, ignore the civil rights of those being arrested in these gigantic prisons, which many human rights groups have openly pointed out and provided evidence of, if he has the power to do all that, how can he not find a single guy and put him on a plane? It's bullshit. That's why. They're both saying they can't do it. They both saying they don't have the power. Nobody has the power to find this man. They're purposely trying to lose him in the system, which is a terrifying concept. And you want to make it more terrifying? Let's bring it close to home. This is already bad. Let's bring it closer to home. This is footage you were never meant to see. This is a conversation between Bukele, the president of El Salvador, and Donald Trump, recorded by Bukele's press team. It's one of the El Salvadorian press agencies, and they broadcasted a conversation that the two had before the official press scrum, where Donald Trump is overheard talking to Bukele about sending American citizens to El Salvador to be put in El Salvadorian prisons, and requesting to the El Salvadorian president to build more prisons in El Salvador so he can hold American citizens there. With the quote being, homegrowns are next. The homegrowns. You gotta build about 5 more places. It's not big enough. homegrowns referencing homegrown criminals. Here is the audio.
The mandate, the people wanted to change all the things, and they wanted. He demanded they love what you do. You know, I'm not your supporter. I want him to do, you know, for homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said, homegrowns are next. The homegrowns built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right. It's not big enough. No, yeah. Come on. So this is a much different office than you're.
So the way we talked about this on this show was these people are the test cases. The people that are being deported, as the courts are saying no and they do it anyway, and as the courts say bring them back and they ignore them and they say they don't have the power and they pretend to be stupid and they sit on their hands purposefully to lose these souls in these prisons without due process. As we say that due process, as we have legislators, elected legislators in this country, like Victoria Spartz, saying that you aren't due process if you've committed crimes. How do you prove you're innocent without being able to present your case? He's trying to shotgun it through without the checks and then abandon them there. Abandon them there despite court orders. And that these are all with non-citizens. These are all with people who are legally vulnerable in the United States because of their immigration status. But it's not necessarily going to end there. You think the deportations of the foreign prison camp just affects, you know, the vegetable farmer or the critical academic who happens to be an immigrant, or the person with some drug offenses on their record who doesn't have proper immigration status, or somebody who's even violent, who have committed violent crimes, are violent criminals? You think it's just going to be them? It's just going to be those with vulnerable current legal status? If this is the power that is useful, disappearing people in a foreign prison, and let me tell you, if you're an authoritarian, the ability to take your opposition and make them disappear, that is extremely useful. Absolutely useful. Why do you think the Assad regime likes disappearing all those people in those huge torture facilities? Why do you think the Saudis disappear people? Why do you think anyone disappears people? And doing that with one vulnerable group of people that you've demonized on the campaign trail for over a decade as just all violent criminals, even though some of them might just be guys who's, got caught with a drug offense once, or some of them might be people who got caught with nothing or have yet to be proven in court. But it doesn't end there. If that is a useful power, which it is, why wouldn't you eventually want to take it over into the arena of American citizenry? Why wouldn't you want to deport the homegrowns, as Donald Trump put it? And let me just say, the way they talked about it being just violent criminals didn't end up being the case in a lot of these instances for the undocumented people that were deported. Is it hard to imagine that it's going to be the same for the American citizens that are deported? That is going to be people who, oh, that looks like a gang tattoo, yank, boom, oh, now daddy, because he had a football tattoo, is gone. And oh, we don't have the power to return them. Oh, we don't have the power to find them. You just happen to have the wrong tattoo on the wrong day, buddy. And you might say that's stupid, that's hard to believe. It's already happened for these vulnerable people. Are you really so naive as to think that it can't happen to you? And are you really even willing to allow for that possibility? This is something that needs to be cracked down upon now. The Supreme Court needs to take action to make sure that their decisions are upheld. If they don't, then what authority do they have? And how can we expect the Trump administration to be deterred from taking unlawful actions? Unlawful actions that it would like to take from anything as far as suspending the Constitution to reinstall Trump as president when he's not in office, or illegally deporting American citizens while he's in office. It was illegal. The courts were ignored. And I think this is a sign of Trump's strategy going forward.